How green was my cover? It's time for Corinne Morgan Corbie Production Diary number 2. August feels as if it's been flying by, and the fact that I've been hunched over my laptop for much of it juggling different comic related tasks has only made time seem to pass that much faster. Don't get me wrong, I've actually been pretty good this summer about getting outside and going for walks, but the last couple of weeks in particular have really been a blur with so much going on. Crunch time prior to the release of every issue of Corbie so far has consistently been challenging. There's always a lot to take care of, making the final refinements to the art and the page layouts, checking for errors, compiling all the different versions of the comic needed for every store and platform, doing social media promotion, and a bunch of other little tedious tasks. The day that the issue 2 remaster came out, I was genuinely on the verge of total burnout. The good news is, I think I'm getting better at this stuff. For the issue 3 launch, I scheduled lots of things to appear online ahead of time rather than manually posting them all on the day, which helped. Also, I just didn't take on too much. You know, as much as I love this series and working on it, the reality of the situation is that nobody else is paying attention to the same degree that I am, and I have to remind myself that it's okay if something is a few hours late in getting posted. The other difference this time around was that the releases are starting to get more routine. Not in a bad way, it's not that things are dull by any means, but the issue 1 remaster launch was 5 years to the day after the release of the original Corbie issue 1, and that had been a long time coming after many setbacks and delays. The production of the issue 2 remaster dragged on and on, so when I was finally able to get it out the door, it was a major cause for celebration. This time around we were only a few weeks behind schedule and it didn't feel like such a big event. And that's normal, I think. I don't expect that when issues 6, 7 or 8 arrive they're going to feel as significant as issue 1. But each one that we get out into the world is special to me, of course. And they have value as a smaller part of one larger body of work. One of the last big tasks I had to deal with while working on issue 3 was the cover, which you're watching the time-lapse for now. The idea for this one came to me while I was finishing up the last few interior pages. Initially I had something else in mind entirely, and spoilers ahead for those of you who haven't read issue 3 yet, but what I'd planned on doing was having something involving Corbie walking through the fog from the end of this issue, and the wolves who chased her would be lurking in the background. Another idea was that we'd simply update the original issue 3 cover art from 2019, which was one of my favourite covers from the original run. That was an appealing approach because the clock was ticking, and naturally it's easier to rework old material than it is to come up with something new. That felt half-hearted to me though. If you're paying me for this comic, I want to make sure you get your money's worth, you know? And then the idea for this cover just came to me that it would involve Neemhain and Maka putting Corbie through the ringer, tying it to the events from the beginning of this issue. There were a few things that I had to tackle while working on this cover before I could make peace with it though. Neemhain was standing a little further back when I was planning the layout, like she was watching Maka dangling Corbie upside down from a few feet off in the background. That was throwing the whole thing off, and I think to a casual observer it might have appeared as if Neemhain was a bit shorter than her sister, which isn't the case. The other thing was the shade of green in the background to me was a little off-putting. I wanted something more vivid, more in line with the now established Corbie aesthetic, where we use these very strong, saturated, punchy colours. For the final version I did go back and tweak it, but I don't know, I'm still not 100% on this. I think perhaps in the future I'll go back and do a further revision because I can never resist the urge to meddle. Putting aside any quibbles I may have, I do think the remastered issue 3 is solid. I covered this in the previous Production Diary vid, but the new pages really turned out great in my opinion. They really helped further develop Corinne's character in particular and give us some insight into who she is, what motivates her. I hope that you'll check this issue out as well as Corbie Remastered issues 1 and 2 if you haven't already. Speaking of issue 1, well that's another reason I wasn't getting too wrapped up in the issue 3 launch. I was busy working on something else behind the scenes. For months now, really since the remastered issue 1 dropped almost a year ago, there's been talk about doing some kind of extremely limited print run for each issue in the series. It's something that was always on the back burner because just getting the digital versions out the door has been so much work in itself. But, finally, I was able to set aside some time to get all of my ducks in order, or maybe I should say get my crows in order. As announced on TikTok this past weekend, yes, it's happening. This is not a drill, this is not a vaporware. I now have in my possession 2 boxes containing 50 copies of Corinne Morgan Corbie #1 with the variant A cover, and another 50 with the variant B cover. These are not on sale just yet. Look for an announcement in the next couple of days, but they're here and they're spectacular. Seriously, I was so worried when I ordered these that something was going to go wrong, that there would be misprints or errors, or that in the worst case scenario I'd have messed up the layout so badly they'd be unusable. Thankfully that hasn't been the case, and all the work that went into agonising over converting the original pages to CMYK for print and ensuring all the colours were to my liking has been worth it. Along those lines, I should point out this is kind of a version 1.1 of the remaster. Both front cover variants have been updated. I don't know how I never noticed on the B cover that the triangular spikes on Corbie's chest armour were missing. Once I did notice that, it drove me up the wall. Throughout the issue there are other teeny tiny alterations to the art where I identified issues, and honestly some of them you probably need a magnifying glass to notice, but I feel better seeing them corrected. Even the 5th anniversary logo on the back cover has been updated. A little late in the day since we're now approaching the 6th anniversary, but hey, better late than never. So here's our roadmap for the rest of 2024. Print editions of issue 1 coming hopefully in the next week or 2, as soon as I can get all of the behind the scenes stuff figured out. On the digital side of things, my goal is to get Corbie Remastered issue 4 out on October 13th, a year to the day after the issue 1 remaster was released, because I think that would be a nice way to put a little bow on this era of Corbie before we move on to all new adventures. My intent is that issue 5 will be out by the end of the year and will mark a whole new beginning for the series, unencumbered by what has been. I want this to mark the point where I finally begin to steer the comic in the direction I've been hinting at throughout the remaster era, and if you look at the new pages that have been added to each issue so far, you can probably get a feel for what I'm trying to achieve. With all of that going on, my intent is to get print versions of Corbie issues 2 through 4 out as well, and eventually to pull all 4 issues of what I consider the Origins arc together into one collectible volume with its own special cover. We're a long way off from that though, and there is a financial outlay involved in getting each issue printed versus the digital editions, where the cost to me is minimal by comparison. If you'd like to see further print runs of Corbie in the future, the best way to ensure that happens is to keep buying the comic. Even if you're buying the digital version, that also helps make sure the print editions can continue. Other ways that you can help include one-off donations, buying merch from our Teespring store, and just spread the word. If there's someone you know who you think would be into this series, please tell them about it, because I think it's been made abundantly clear at this point that I'm terrible at promoting myself or my work. I clearly need all the help I can get. On that note, obligatory reminder here to please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I want to keep making these production diary vids in the future on a regular basis, to try and chronicle everything that I've learned on this journey and document everything that goes into the making of this little independent comic book series. Don't forget to follow me on social media too. I'm on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, Tumblr. I'm really trying to be active on as many of these sites as I can these days. I'm doing my best to cover all my bases, and I will be back soon with another video.